Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. Welcome to the Indigenous Language Institute's Web Symposium. And I am Inez Slaughter, Executive Director of Indigenous Language Institute and your moderator today. Today's presentation featuring Adikuns Haley Olson and Zebins Alexandra Johnson of OOG, which in the English translation would be Adult Ojibwe Immersion Academy, will last approximately 1 hour for the presentation. After the presentation, we will take a 10-minute break before starting the Q&A session. During the break, this is important, keep your window open on your device. Do not press the leave button because once you do, you cannot be readmitted. And to submit a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And questions will be answered during the Q&A session after the break. And now, may I present Adikuns and Zebins.
Bonjour, Adikuns in the go, Adikindu them. When they give me sing, gi tashi big egu, when they give me sing in Danungum, Wasa da Schwab non gochbal kitenoe magnuk, man nishnabe king, I gama king. Apchin the migutuain dum umaya ayay egg, gay umayayan, chigagi kitoyang nungum. My name is Adikuns. I come from Caribou Clan. I'm First Nations Korean Mukmuk, and I am the coordinator of parent and adult programs at Ojibwe Motarida Oma Gitiki Manang, OOG. And I'll pass it to Zebins.
How miigwech, aning nin Zebins and degu mekena kendo dem. Nisquagimi was a gaigening Wenjabayan, Wenjabawa, Dindinoe Magana Gigae. Going da shiride ingi taje umbegi egusin kakabikang mi emaga ga taje umbegi eguan gi equazen suyandash going ingi inishina bemosi binishigo gi ushkanigi kwayan iwade gaye ug in dananoki Nawidu koa gingu abanujia giwade mino gai indiji kan gidinwe winenan. Anin, my name is Zebins Alexandra Johnson. I am Turtle Clan and a member of the Red Lake Nation here in Minnesota. I work alongside Adikuns at Ojibwe Motarida Oma Gidekimanang, or OOG, OOG, with the curriculum language team, along with helping in our language nest, Goko Nanek in Dawad, or the grandmother's house. So I guess miigwech for coming today, and we're excited to share with you what we've been doing with our adult immersion program, and then how that's been leading into our language nest. So I'm gonna share the screen here. And get the presentation going.
Oh, looks good. So, gajagana shimnungum gae. So speak some English today too, and give you all to really give the essence of what we mean by making mistakes adult second language learning. We're going to kind of tell the story of our program, and with that understanding comes hopefully some useful tools and knowledge to take back into your communities. So Ojibwe Motarida Oma Gitiki Manang started around 11 winters ago or so, and it started as an adult second language learning academy where we work alongside our elder first language speakers, and they're like the the backbone of our program, the backbone of our knowledge and everything. And so the design of the program was to create that environment that maybe we would have used to have, right, with full immersion. And so we bring in our adult second language learners. We have some core facilitators, and along with our elder first speakers, and create this environment of living in the language and, you know, just enjoying time together, staying in dorms together and enjoying meals together with everybody. And we'll get more into detail about this, but this is just kind of the overview of what we're talking about today. And we'll briefly get into as well as what has currently happening is the transition to with our language nest, with tri-generational language nest. So continuing with our elder first speakers and our adult second language learners, and also now bringing in ages 0 to 5 with the little ones, as that's kind of transition, right? When we have our young adults, and now our young adults are starting families, and what does that look like to continue immersion and hopefully bring up first language speakers?
Miigwech for that adekuns. I think something that maybe we should start with talking about as well, which we kind of had mentioned a little bit in our introductions while we were speaking Anishinaabe, but I think it's important just for all of you to know that Adekuns and I both, neither of us grew up speaking Anishinaabe, so I'll let you talk a little bit about your journey as well. But we actually attended OOG, the adult immersion camp, together over the winter of 2014 to 2015, where I think for me, I had been learning Anishinaabe for 2 years at that point. And that was really the first time that I had full immersion. I just remember being so extremely tired during the weekends. We'd get there Friday night and leave on Sunday, and by the time we were headed home after a full day of language immersion and using Anishinaabe all day, leaving with a very full heart, but also just extremely exhausted. So after doing the winter program as a student, then I started working with OOG in the summer of 2016, and then have been working on and off with OOG from the summer of 2016.
Yeah, and so I had a similar story to Z-Beans. Didn't start really getting serious about learning until I was a young adult. Heard some language growing up, as maybe many of you have, some common words or things like that. And then it was by the time that we were young adults and we started getting a little more serious about our language learning. And like Z-Beans, I had a couple years of language class before attending OOG as a student in 2014, and having that really be that first moment of what it's like to be in immersion. And, it was really scary right away, but it was a great learning environment. And that's what's helped us get to where we are today, right, is just by laughter and making mistakes. And so here we go.
All right. Let's see if it works. If I can. There we go. On to the next slide.
So we kind of want to start with some of our founding mission statements. As we're adding in the language nest, we're talking about what might be changing in these, but the core values of what they are still stand. And that's kind of, a good starting point for language programs, is to know what your vision is, right? And understand your goals. And so when we're all meeting together, we talk about how every day we want to speak together and live our lives in the language, and, show that as who we are as a people. So it's not just about the language, right? It's about everything that's embodied in the language, your culture, and the humor and everything like that, the stories, you know, and so we're looking at that deep within on that level of like, what do we want to pass on?
Yeah, which I think leads to our kind of our second mission statement here, which is taking what we learn and bringing it home. So our program serves, we have, you know, over 200 alumni of OOG currently represented at immersion schools all across Anishinaabe, Waking, from Wadukadadin to Nigani, Wasabi, Ojibwe, Mutadiwin, Masabe, Kong, 7 Generations Institute, Wichoe, Nandigakendan, teaching at the University of Minnesota as well. And so one of the main things is working to, you know, come into this immersion space together, but then know that we're here for a bigger purpose. You know, we have a lot of fun while we're at immersion together. And then knowing, okay, well, everything that we're learning here, this is stuff that I can bring home to my community. I can bring home to my family. These different language games I can use to teach people that I'm speaking and learning with. And I think it's pretty exciting too, because it's helped people to come to our program and then see what we're doing, take that home, and even create a program that's based off of OOG, such as Aishkanishna up in out east in Southern Ontario. So, and that's been running for a handful of years now as well. So it's pretty exciting to see kind of what people can do with what we're doing with our program and how they take that back and bring it into their community.
Yeah, and so again, that's kind of what we're hoping today, right? Is something to take home. Although this is a very small little hour worth of information, you know, but it always is what's greater, you know, not just for us, but for everybody and like all of the Indigenous languages and moving forward in that way. So something else we talk about that we really strive for in our program that I think is one of the most crucial aspects of it is to create a positive language learning community. And so to fostering those positive relationships and to continue that community outside of the program. And so, you know, so we create this environment, but the goal isn't just what we have there, it's everything that happens outside. So what happens when we're done with our program, right? So when people go back home, we're hoping that everybody's keeping connections with elders, feeling available to reach out and ask questions and, you know, joke with each other, talk to each other on Facebook or different apps and email each other and, you know, all of those type of things. And so when we get to what is a positive language learning community and environment mean, as many of us know, working in your heritage language is very difficult and it can come with a lot of baggage, right? There's a lot of history there that is very difficult to work through. There's a lot of heartache and pain, but what we recognize is that one of the best ways to heal is through laughter in language, right? And so we do our best to foster that type of relationship. And sometimes that means a safe word. And so that's something we offer during programming is a safe word. So if somebody needs to walk out of the space for a while and decompress, you know, that's one way to do it. And we do one-on-one meetings. And so initially they're required, and then later on we do optional one-on-one meetings just so we can break things down with participants and students and have access to mentor groups as well. And so maybe some of the alumni who've been through before can work with the new students and help them through what they might find difficult, you know, because it is overwhelming to be in full immersion. And yeah, I don't know, Zidins, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, and I think a big part of this is trying to form these positive relationships because, you know, when we come together for OOG, it's a little bit of a simulated experience, right? Like we have a lot of measures in place to make sure that people feel safe, they feel supported when they're using their language. And so the question comes up of, well, how do we continue that when we finish our 2-week summer program, or how do you continue that when we're not together on the weekends? And I think, at least for me, the biggest thing that I've found is that when we come together and we make these friendships in immersion, a lot of these people, the friends that I've made, I haven't heard maybe speak English, or you hear them speak English for the first time and they sound so different. You're like unrecognizable almost, because you've built that relationship solely in the language, which I think is really important for continuing those relationships outside of our language camp. Like Adikun said, we make use of Facebook. So we make a Facebook group for each cohort. So students can continue to, maybe share language journeys or ask different questions, or try and arrange gatherings outside of OOG. And I think that's, for me, I think the biggest part is, forming those relationships through the language, because it allows you to continue everyday life with those people, whether it's texting or Facebook, or maybe you get to see them in person, but you continue those relationships in Anishinaabemowin. All right, so what we do. Kinatamana Degus?
So I'm sure some of you here are sitting, well, what is it exactly that they're talking about, right? So with our camp, you can see this picture here. There's a beautiful group of people, right? So we get together in these spaces, and we have an array of adult language learners where, as you can see, there's some children in this picture as well. So we're working on, how to incorporate children as we start to develop our language nest. And what we do then is we run these programs. So right now we have a summer program that goes 2 weeks long in the summer when we're meeting in person. So 2 weeks long in person in the summer. And then in the winters, we have 1 weekend a month in the winters, and we do full immersion. And what that looks like for us is, living together in the language, working with our elder first speakers, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, but really our elders, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the next slide as well, but our elders are the core of what we do, and we ask them for guidance for everything, right? And we open our program with ceremony, and we feast our work, and we listen to all of their teachings. And then us as young adult second language learners, we don't really consider ourselves the teachers, but we consider ourselves the facilitators. And so we're working side by side with our elder first speakers and our participants, and then we're kind of that bridge, right? So if there's something that our speakers are talking about, and maybe the students aren't fully grasping yet because they don't have enough language, we try to break things down and really scaffold it. And we have different lesson plans planned out, and sometimes our elders like to share big long teachings, and so we try to get the tangible things within there to share with the students, right? So we'll have target vocabulary that they're aiming for, or a certain activity that we want them to learn. And so and we go about this in a lot of different ways, which we'll also talk about here in a little bit. And yeah, Zivines, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess I'll move to the next slide, and we can talk about a little bit more about how the incorporation of our elders within our program. So as Adikun had talked about, our elders really are the backbone of our programming. They dictate kind of, everything that we do, the different aspects that we teach about. And so during our camp, we aim to have at least 2 elders at every camp present at any given time. As Adikun said, we normally open camp with ceremony led by our elders, and then we'll get into our general schedule a little bit later. But what we do when we're not at camp is we work with our elders and say, you know, what would you like to talk about at camp this upcoming weekend? Maybe they want to talk about Bukwejiganikang, making bread. Or as you can see in the middle photo here, this was during our summer camp, but we did harvesting birch bark, and then later took that birch bark back and had another lesson that was putting together feather cases and biscuit naganakang, making birch bark baskets. And you know, they like to do these traditional activities with us, as well as what you'll see on the right-hand photo there is during our winter programming, we try and incorporate things that are going to be used with our students in everyday life. And so this is an example of gift giving during the holiday season. We talk about how to wrap gifts, and there's so much vocabulary there. And as Adekunle was saying too, so we prepare ahead of time for our elders, telling them, you know, what would you like to talk about this weekend? Once we've figured out exactly what they'd like to talk about, then us as facilitators, we prepare different vocabulary for students to look at before coming to camp for that weekend. And then depending on who the elder is, some of them like to lead the entire lesson, so then us facilitators, we might just sit back and help out where needed. Other elders like the facilitator to lead. So we might end up teaching the students the activity for that day, and the elder will add vocabulary where we mess up or you know, want to share an anecdote or a story from growing up, or you know, maybe they received this really funny gift, and so we'll take different breaks depending on how they feel during the lesson. But generally we do about an hour-long kind of lesson, not to, you know, so we don't fatigue our students, so our elders have time to rest. But the more time we can spend with our elders, our first language speakers here, the more time we're able to kind of change our English brain, I guess is the ideal. And I think the biggest part too is, you know, they know that we're all learners. So even us coming here as facilitators for the language program, you know, we're second language learners as well. And so the biggest, I think, take home is how, you know, we're just facilitators. We're not the teachers. Did you have anything else more to add on to this one, Adekunle, or should I?
Can jump to the next one and then I'll add on there. Oh, so our students, when we're thinking about, as expanding on what Zevins was saying, when we're talking about our elders kind of getting used to us fumbling around and things like that, that's something, you know, that we focus on as our title, right? Making mistakes. And so when we bring in our students, a huge thing that we look for is their comfortability and willingness to make fools of themselves, right? To get out there, make mistakes, and be okay with that, and be able to joke with ourselves and elders with that. And so as we're working through the program, as Zevins mentioned, we've been working with our elders for a long time, and they're used to us making mistakes at this point. And we'll ask them maybe 10 times to repeat something because we don't quite hear it. And then we start to joke about it and laugh about it. And some things that we've learned through different trainings is to make mistakes as facilitators, even physically, right? So maybe you drop your stack of paper, or you're fumbling with whatever's on the table and starting to get some laughs going and showing that you too are a human, right? So sometimes it's intimidating to go into these new spaces with these people who you know, you put up on some level in your mind, but really we're all just language learners together, right? And so as we're working with our students, that's a huge thing that we focus on. And then naturally, as the second language learners, we're always making verbal mistakes too. And so as we're speaking, you know, we're modeling just naturally without intention what it looks like to get corrected by our elders you know, and so they'll come in and correct us sometimes when we're making mistakes, and then sometimes you'll make a mistake and you'll say it just, you know, in Ojibwe, and there's some words that just a little vowel length off can mean drastically different things. So you catch yourself in some loose moments, but everybody just laughs about it. And that's the really the great part about it, right? Is learning in that way. And so when we're going through our students, we have an application process, and we kind of we look for that level of lifelong dedication so that people can get the most out of their time with our elder first speakers, right? Because we all know that we don't have that much time left with our elders. And so we look for a lot of long-term dedication, and then that that willingness and ability to bring in that laughter and those mistakes and that safe learning environment.
Yeah, so just to add on to that as well, some of kind of, I guess you could call them the rules that we put in place while we're at language camp is we do have a no English policy. And so what does that exactly entail? And it actually, you know, even if you're trying to say place names are different things, we try and act them out or write them out. We don't, you know, we don't allow the students to say, banana. How would you say banana? They have to use their meta talk, I guess, to describe it. Okay, it looks like, you know, Asianagwak, so like monkey food or something. Trying, you know, we encourage our students to try and get at the different ways to talk about things. And it actually helps to build their language learning because, you know, they're acting around, maybe they'll start acting like a monkey and next thing you know, everybody's laughing. And it's just different ways to get students to break down that barrier of, oh my gosh, if I mess up, if I say something incorrectly, you know, I might be judged. And as facilitators, we do that too, kind of joke around, do a lot of acting. And then along on this no English line, something that's a little striking is no technology. So specifically during our summer program, which is at the moment 2 full weeks, we actually lock up everybody's electronics. So we have a safe, and we actually turn that into one of our lessons, right? So we learn how to talk about, oh, what does your phone look like? How big is your phone? Do you have a photo as your screensaver? What's on your photo? What color is it? So it leads to a whole language lesson. The students, they do get their phone during the summer for, I think, about an hour in the evenings, you know, to check up on family. And but part of what we do for that as well is we'll have iPads or so students can take photos and do recordings. Like there's still access to technology, but it's one of the ways that we try to ensure that you're not just sitting on your phone texting in English, you know, while you're in language camp, trying to make the most out of those times. During winter, we just ask that students stow them away, keep them in their bags or leave them in their dorm room. And then, you know, we do give out our as facilitators, our numbers for emergency purposes and stuff. But I think that's one of the ways that you can, as a student, even as a facilitator, you're physically, it's a physical commitment to say, hey, I'm here and I'm present to speak Anishinaabe, to build the community here. And it's physical by locking up your cell phone and your technology. So the places that we work, on the left here is the Cloquet Forestry Center, and this is where we house our winter program. The Anishinaabe Wakaigan is on the right here, and this is where our summer program is housed. And a big important part for us is that we have these spaces that are our language spaces. So when we arrive here, we don't speak English. And a big part as well, which maybe Adikuns, if you want to talk about, but is the English orientation. So we actually do an English orientation with our students before they arrive to create this environment of saying, all right, we're going to tell you what's going to happen. We're going to say it all again in Anishinaabemowin once we get on site. But it kind of, I think as adults as well, we like to know what's going to happen. And so it helps to give our students an idea of, okay, if I show up, I know this is what's going to be asked of me. I've already been told it once. And so now that they've heard it once, when we go over it again, speaking in Anishinaabe, they'll understand and know. And yeah, so I don't, DeQuince, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and I'll add to, I peeked at the Q&A and I see a couple of questions about writing and grammar and things like that, and we will get to that here shortly. But so our facilities is a huge part, is that, as Zibins was saying, with the technology and with the buildings, is to have clear boundaries of language space, and so that we can disassociate from the English. And so when we do English orientation, specifically for our summer session, when we're together for a long period of time for those 2 weeks, we meet at a completely separate facility to do our English orientation and talk about what to expect, so that once we get over to our on-site, which is the Anishinaabe Wakaigan, that is full immersion. And so we can switch our brains to it, right? And we found this to be a crucial time to alleviate some of those anxieties and things like that, to talk through some of the expectations and what the process is that will be happening in English, so that students at least have a foundation to understand what to expect. And also that's our time that we'll use then to set a safe word and let students know, that they can take breaks if they're feeling overwhelmed, or meet one-on-one. So we talk about our one-on-one meetings and things like that at the orientation. And we provide that time for that students can ask all the questions they need. And we still, something that we implement that we'll talk about when we talk about grammar is we have an English object. And so we have a goofy English hat or English ball or something like that, that we'll even use at our English orientation to also make it known that this is an English time in an English space.
So we talked about this a little bit, but we meet in winter and summer. For winter, we meet for 6 months from November through April, and it's 1 weekend a month. So we arrive Saturday morning, all day Saturday, and then our students head out later in the afternoon on Sunday. And then for summer, we meet for 2, sometimes 3 weeks, but we've lately been, the past few years have been doing 2 full weeks. And so students will arrive and we're together Monday through Friday. We give them kind of the weekend off, but they have the option of staying on site if they want to through the weekend. If people have families, sometimes they'll go home for the weekend. So continue on to the next one here.
So this is where we're really getting into the meat of the program. And this is an example schedule, which you see is monolingual in Ojibwe-Moan. And so even if our students can't fully understand, right, they can at least see the times and things like that, and then ask questions about the language on the schedules. But something
Also,
that, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's also a language tool too, because I remember coming to OOG as a student, my first time getting the schedule and just, not knowing some of the words that were there, but it actually helps build vocabulary as well by giving students this monolingual schedule that they can follow. Because even if you don't know the word, if you start seeing, oh, this is what we're doing at this time, okay, that must be this word, or, look it up later, I guess, but.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, is to create language tools and resources wherever we can possible to make the environment as usable as possible, right? So sometimes we think, oh, we can't talk about that because we don't have the words for it or things like that. But really we can, work with our elders and figure out what to do for these sort of things and write a schedule And so as we get into this level of programming, what we're looking at here is our on times and off times. So we have, as we go through our schedule, we have times where we meet in the morning and decompress with our students and maybe talk about things that you feel that are blocking you, and then we throw those away or we'll put them in a fire. You know, kind of like your anxiety or your shyness or your anger, if you're, you know, you have something going on at home, and we try to create that environment of presentness early in the morning. And then our elders join us. And from there we have our scheduled elder time. And so we're working with our elders, and we do rotational groups, right? So we'll break our students into smaller groups, because what we aim for is the most participation as possible. And so if we had 20 people in one group, not everybody's going to get the chance to speak, right? And so we have to shrink them down to, you know, 5 to 7 people in a group, so that we make sure that every individual is actually getting production time and being able to ask questions and fully participate, so that they can build themselves into a stronger speaker and take their language home to their communities. Zevin, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to note on here, you'll see we have Odamin Oda written. So at 10:30, the second line here is Odamin Oda. After we break, we have lunch, break, we come back together at 1:30, Odamin Oda. Then 2:30, we sit with our elders, and again, Odamin Oda. And so I just wanted to point that out, because that means let's play. So we have playtime, I guess, is how you could call it. And so this is time that sometimes is led by our elders. So Pat Ningwans, who presented early in the summer, talked a little bit about some of the different games she had organized. Her presentation through ILI, she talked about having a fortune teller. We also had a game where she did speed dating, you know, just with the students, which is just a good way to, you get a few minutes, learn as much as you can about each other, just something to get the students moving and talking and creating low stakes environment, because we're just playing, having a good time. It's not a stressful time, I guess. And then I just wanted to quickly mention too, so this is our schedule for when we've been in person. We're not going to go into depth right now about how we've adapted for online, for Zoom or Zoog, as some of our students have coined the term. But feel free to ask questions if you want to hear how we've adapted to being online, and we can talk about it during the question and answer session later this morning.
So this example schedule now, as you can see, is a lot less wordy. And so this is our summertime schedule, and a lot of it ends up being the flexibility of our off time and just how we're together for such a long space of time. You see in the morning, Wakagabuida. So that's our morning circle time with our students again. And something else that we do in our morning circle times is wake up the brain. And so we'll do cross body workouts. So say you use your right hand and you tap your left leg, and you use your left hand, you tap your right leg. And so that gets the neurons firing in the brain across lateral. And so we try to get our students awake. We do some motions, we do some squats, we do some jumping jacks. We get everybody going to get their blood flowing. And as we wake up the brain, that helps prepare us for language learning. And so after that, then we go into our meal times, and our meal times are another example of our off times, quote unquote, because we don't have anything planned or structured. But what's happening during these times is the casual language that develops as if you were eating lunch with your friends somewhere. And so you're sitting with the elders, facilitators, other students. We'll lay question sheets out on the tables, and we'll lay paper across the whole entire table so students can draw or write questions and write down notes from elders. And in this space, we have it so that it's loose and it's fun so that people can sit and listen if they need to, or those who are really talkative can start practicing their language. Some of the question sheets we have is like, if you could be an animal, what animal would you be? You know, kind of silly things to get people talking and laughing and just having fun with meals. Because then once we go that next one down there on Dabida, that's when we're sitting with our elders in those structured lessons again. And so those structured lessons are where we're getting that new in-depth language, that really scaffolded, planned lessons. You know, we kind of use 3-5-7 approach, which is 3 words, 5 words, or 7 words, or 3 target things, 5 target things, 7 target things. That's the most that a person can take home with them from, you know, a lesson. And so we try to focus in on that. Maybe some of our advanced students can take home 7, maybe our new students take home 3. And so we keep them really bite-sized chunks, because it is overwhelming, right? When an elder's talking and they're going a mile a minute and you're catching maybe 5 words that they say. And so we try to make it tangible, and so that the students can take something home. But then those meal times, then we can utilize that language. You know, some of that language crosses over through different topics, right? And so that's the time to practice and laugh. And oftentimes we hear from our alumni that the times that they like the most are the off times. And so as we get later in this schedule, you see at 7:30 it says Budawang. And so that's when our elders have gone to bed, and it's just all the facilitators and the students. And for this schedule, it was making a fire. And so we all just hang out at the fire at night, and all of us are second language learners, and we don't necessarily know all the words we need, but we'll play games like 2 truths and 1 lie, or we'll bring out the lacrosse sticks and toss the ball around for a while, or we'll hang out and just tell stories and joke with each other. And so our students often say that that's the time where they really bloom, because it's a little less pressured. Sometimes you feel nervous around the first speakers. And so these off times where you can let loose a little bit and just have those casual conversations and really practice your production and take the language that you learned throughout the day and try to use that and bring it out and put it into production.
Yeah, and aside from the kind of off times, I guess, where we're just hanging out, maybe playing a game, it's low stakes. If people feel like I've talked too much today, I can't talk during this game right now, they can sit and listen and observe. But during these on times, when we have our rotation schedules with the elders, we also have, I guess, what you could call on times, where we have morning announcements and meal skits, which I think are pretty important to talk about. So every morning, a rotation group of students will have to do a morning skit. So it's right before we eat breakfast, and we have specific topics for each of them to talk about. So someone has to talk about a new word that they learned, which encourages them to say, spend time with an elder and say, hey, can you help me learn a new word? And the elder will give them a new word for something. So then they get to report, all right, check out this awesome word I learned. They can talk as much or little about it as they want to make sure that the rest of the students understand. So it kind of transfers that responsibility of a student attending to then being a teacher. We also have talking about the weather, again, encouraging the elders to encouraging that engagement with the elders to say, what is the weather like today? And you might learn a completely new word to talk about how the weather looks. What's ripe? So maybe we'll have the students ask the elders, okay, what's ripe right now? What kind of things, what kind of medicines could you gather? What type of animals would you be hunting right now? All these different ways to encourage that engagement with our elders. And then the students will come and present in front of everyone. And just thinking about one of the times that I had done it was I had asked an elder for all the different types of ways you could laugh. And then during our mealtime, the morning announcement was giving examples of all these different types of laughing, but would have to act it out then so students would understand. And it just created, a lot of camaraderie, because I was kind of up there making a little bit of a fool of myself, but I had a fun time and the students were laughing. And then we also have the mealtime skits. So whatever we're going to be eating for dinner that night, we'll have our students prepare a skit to inform us what we're going to be eating. And that could be anything from a song. So some students will take a modern pop song and say, you know, this is what we're going to be eating, and start putting all the different words in. Or maybe they'll have any type of skit, but it allows the students to play with the language, have fun with the language. I guess you could consider it an on time because they're, I guess, required to get up there and talk, but it allows them to play and have fun and make jokes with the language and just build their comfortability. So I guess we can go into grammar.
Yeah, so I see somebody had a question about grammar. So we do incorporate grammar instruction. That's we found to be a vital part of adult second language learning. And so as our brains are more matured, it's very helpful for us to have access to grammar instruction. And so how we fit in our grammar instruction in our program is within the rotations with the elders. And so our students go between the different rotations. So there's 2 rotations on at a time and 1 off, so that the elders get a break in between teaching. And so as one elder breaks, the grammar instructor is then teaching. And during this time, if this is the time that students get to ask clarifying questions, maybe they keep hearing a phrase that people are saying throughout the day, or they heard the elders say something that they never heard before and things like that. And so as you see in this picture, we have a funny little clown hat on our grammar instructor there. And so this is a time that we do allow English for clarifying questions. And so we encourage students to use as much language as possible in grammar lecture, but sometimes to really get the depths and understanding of the complexities of the language, we allow students to use a grammar, use the English hat, or we also had like an underwear ball, you know, to make it least appetizing as possible to speak English. And so we use those items so that there's a clear break that this is English moment, and then, you know, they can ask those clarifying questions, because again, as adult second language learners, it is really beneficial for us to have that level of input within our immersion, so that we know we can understand, you know, the structures of the language and things like that. And also our grammar instructor will give out homework in between sessions. And so that is, you know, a supplementary tool for students to use and access. And so that's to help them learn new grammar patterns or new conjugations, new vocabulary, and that they often build on our lessons with our elders. So there's a lot of communication between us as facilitators and our grammar instructor of what's happening around the whole program. And so that, you know, we can build off each other and really get the best learning possible for the students and just continue that scaffolding of their learning.
So here are just some photos of the different activities we've done at Language Camp. You know, both the traditional activities that we want to carry on to the future, and then I guess modern activities such as going shopping at the grocery store, talking about money, wrapping gifts. And the biggest part is that we want to be living in our language, right? So we want to prepare the students to be able to talk about all different types of aspects that might come up in their lives. And you know, a big thing too is that we recognize that a lot of students have different learning styles. So I know Underquincy had said, someone in the chat had mentioned something about writing. So we do actually give our students little notebooks that they, you know, I think as adults, sometimes as second language learners as well, we just kind of like to cling to our notebook. We like to be writing things. And it helps us to say, okay, I'm not going to lose this word because I'm writing, or I'm listening to this lesson and I'm writing. And so we do want to give our students that option if they like to write. Some students like to just sit and listen and absorb. But we do give them that option, and we hand out notebooks for them and help in that way, so that, you know, because people do have different ways of learning. So we try and utilize kind of as many learning styles as possible, whether it's the note taking, acting out, hands-on activities. So a lot of the things that we do physically do, right? We're not just kind of abstractly talking about birch bark gathering, we might have a pre-lesson on birch bark gathering so the students can learn all the vocabulary. And then when we go do it, it'll be fresh in their mind, and they'll be able to implement the language that they've just used. Let's see here.
Yeah, I can jump in too. And so when we're talking about different learning styles for all you educators out there, it's kind of the universal design for learning, right? So we incorporate as much as possible to reach our different learners. And so that'll look like acting, you know, so we have our role playing, we have hands-on activities. As you can see, we're actually there skinning a beaver hide, you know, making the wigwas. And we do a lot of TPR, so different actions for students to draw those connections in their head. And so you can think about, you know, for beaver skinning, we'll have like an action that goes with that. And we'll do long-term retrieval practices. And so if something's used, you know, we look at our weekend program. So 1 week in a month, if we use something 1 month, then we'll try to incorporate that same language the next month and the next month, and kind of build on that and to solidify it in the brain. So if you utilize, you know, certain language in multiple different settings, you know, so like the folding language in particular, you can fold when you're wrapping presents. You also fold when you're making your birch bark baskets. You also fold when you're folding your laundry. You also fold when you're folding the diaper on the baby. You also fold when you're tying the baby up in the Wapachiba zone. You know, so we use all this language that's repetitive that maybe changes little bits, but the roots stay the same. And so we get to that retrieval practice, and we have what we call the Anokiwigamig. So that's the time where students can go into their journals and reflect on what they did during the day, write things out in the language. We have the newscast so that students get into that presentation mode where they're, you know, it's a little different than role playing and acting, and you're having to, you know, share the news. And then we also have the grammar lessons for those people who are very much so into the linguistics and the books of things. And then we also have that time where we sit and listen to our elders, whether it's the structured lessons or if it's elder storytelling. So they're talking for a long time. And so we really do our best to provide all of these different settings. And as Zevins mentioned too, a huge part of what we do is to keep the language living. And so it's not just the traditional activities, right? It's the day-to-day things. It's going to the store, it's learning how to drive, it's learning how to wrap our presents and all of those sort of things, so that we can make sure to keep the language living and within our homes. And something I know we forgot to mention is that during our summer program, we do chores every morning. And so we're cleaning the bathrooms, we're scrubbing the toilets, we're doing the dishes, we're sweeping the floors, we're taking out the trash. And all of those become lessons. And then eventually, because we're doing that for 2 weeks straight every single day, then those just become habits. And then that language becomes a habit too. And so we really try to create that space, because how often do you clean at home, right? So you're cleaning all the time. And so then you have that language. And it's just a great way to bridge that gap between, you know, so some things we do at camp are like not totally reality, right? Because we create a lot of fun things and do a lot of games, but we do want to make sure that there's different things you can take home.
See, I just accidentally hit to the next slide, but I guess we can continue on for that. From what Adekunle was talking about, is a lot of our students are having babies, right? Or have babies or have toddlers that they want to be able to speak Anishinaabe too. So we're aiming for that family, that multi-generational use of language at the home and in the home. As you can see here, we've started within the past few years incorporating a lot of baby language lessons. So changing the diaper, tying babies up in the Wapachiba zone. And a lot of that vocab builds off of stuff that we've already done with our students. And so really that's kind of the, I guess, the overall arching aim of our program, right, is to facilitate this multi-generational language use, funnel these students, these adults who maybe have young kids or don't have kids yet, to be able to use language with their children at home. And a big part of, I guess, what this can lead into next is our language nest. Let's see here. So a lot of our alumni of our program have had babies. And so it kind of led to, you know, what are the next steps? People are having babies, they want help and support raising their children in the language. And so we're in the first, we're in the second year, although put on hold a little bit due to COVID, of developing a tri-generational language nest program. At the moment, our elders haven't been able to come too much. We had our first elder visit in person actually last week, socially distanced, everybody's wearing masks outside, which sometimes makes it a little bit difficult to hear exactly what's being said, but working to build that transfer of language and showing these kids that there is a community of language speakers, and we don't, you know, necessarily have to be at language camp, because we're out in the world living the language together and building these relationships together. Do you want to add more onto this, Adequos?
Yeah, I'll just jump in with something else that is very applicable to all aspects of the program, is that we send resources to our participants. And so that's something we've done with our adult language learners in the program and with the language nest. And so we create these resources. So that's kind of what we're doing in between programming, is we're working with our elder first speakers, doing a lot of documentation and giving the language to the families and to the students so that they can have the additional resources at home. And that's been a huge thing during COVID too, as we're getting out that language for the family. So if you go back one more, back to the language nest. So you see we're in the garden and in the woods here. And so we knew that this would be coming, right? And so we worked with our elder first speakers, even though we have to do this via Zoom, and we get as much language as possible. So we're still getting that first language speaker language, but then we're passing it on to the family. So even though our elders are absent, they still have played the huge role in making sure that our families have our language and our students have their language, you know. So we're documenting everything that we can with them and getting recordings and putting together different resources so that our families and our students can take it home, you know, and kind of study up and practice beforehand, and so they can become familiar with the language.
Yeah, I'll just skip ahead here now to, so what Adequos was talking about was that so before our students arrive, we plan, okay, we talk to our elders and say, you know, what would you like to teach this weekend? And we actually work with them to maybe create videos. There's Coco Jones, Nancy Jones here in the middle. We made a video of how to set a trap with her that we put language over and have that as a resource for our students. We also made photos labeling a trap and how to talk about the different parts of you know, a beaver's home. So we prepare these materials and we send it out to students ahead of time. And then also while we're at camp, like I said, we do take away technology, but we have iPads and little, what are the small ones called?
Zooms?
Yeah, little, yeah, kind of like iPhones, but you can't use them for calling. But we have all these, we try to provide materials for our students to be able to record when they're in person. We take videos, we record the lessons, and then we actually upload them all onto Google Drive and share them with our students. So when they go home, they can reflect back and say, oh, I really want to, you know, sit through that snare lesson again. And we'll provide all the recording and materials, because I think, you know, a big part of what we're doing is we're helping to create this environment for us all to be able to speak Anishinaabe. However, we're also getting to spend this really valuable and like really beautiful time with our first language speakers, with our elders, doing different activities with them. And so, you know, we can't deny that it's a very important language documentation area, right? So we record everything as much as we can. So, you know, sometimes we'll have full hour-long recordings of these different lessons that we can store and then go back upon to maybe make more materials for our students to use at a later point in time. So, and we are told as well, I think an important thing to mention is that our elders do say sometimes like not to record this. They'll say, all right, okay, go, or once we're done recording, we'll share this teaching. So maybe we'll get to record the bulk of the lesson, and then we'll turn off our recording devices and we'll take that as a time to learn different teachings from our elders that they want to share and pass on to us. And I think those are pretty valuable times. Just for time here, I think if anybody has any further questions about kind of how we upload everything, cutting things with Audacity, uploading them to Google Drive. But then we also work with Bidanaquet, John Nichols, who will take some of the words, maybe, especially with all these new parenting lessons that we've been doing, there's a lot of vocabulary that's yet to be uploaded into the Ojibwe People's Online Dictionary. And so we work closely with Bidanaquet to say, we have this recording of a lot of new language material. We've broken up the word lists. And so we're trying to, also preserve and help to pass on the language in that way going forward.
Yeah, and then Zevins, if you go to the next slide there too. So we do have all of our resources up online, and of course it's Ojibwe specific, but you can look at it and kind of see the layout. We're working on developing a new website and making our website a lot more user-friendly and having the resources be way more accessible and laid out in a better way, because right now we're kind of just fumbling through Google Drive. But this is, something to see kind of what we have going on and seeing what type of tools that might be useful for your language and programs. And something else that looking to wrap this up with is something when we're thinking about our second language learners and now our language nest, and looking at our tri-generational language nest, is we're not raising our youth, but rather we're raising our elders. And so what are we passing on to them? And I'll let you all sit with that as we go into our break and then go into our questions.
Thank you so much, Adikuns and D-Beans. We will take a 10-minute break. And again, to remind you, do not press the leave button and leave the device on. And when we come back, and don't forget to enter your Q&A questions into the Q&A box. You'll have time afterwards as well, but if you do have questions before you take the break or on break, please do so. We'll see you in 10 minutes. So we will start the Q&A session if everybody is back. And thank you again for the wonderful presentation. And I have a quick question for the two of you. Can you see the Q&A on your screen? Oh, okay.
Yes.
But if you don't mind, let us do it the way we decided to do, which is I'll pose the question, and we'll start with the one that seems like a good place to start. Halle Turning Heart asks, do learners attending your academy already have some background in the language, or are some starting from ground zero?
Yeah, so our students, we have had students start as beginners. And usually if they're coming in as beginners, they're taking a class alongside of it. So a class at a college or university, something that helps supplement the learning. So our program is kind of more designed for beginner intermediate, kind of teetering in that space, just because it is full immersion, and that can be really intensive for some people, especially while if you're brand new to the language, it may not benefit your learning. It may actually deter you from learning because you'll be too overwhelmed. And so we do look for students who have a good enough baseline to survive in immersion. And we do provide survival phrases as well. So useful tools for them and questions and phrases for them to start to interact with other people at the program. But we as I was saying, we have taken beginners, but normally they are in a class that correlates or like goes alongside with the programming.
Thank you. And the next one is from Misha. What kind of resources do you provide to home language nest families? And I think you showed a few examples, but if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, for sure. So starting with, I guess, the pandemic, we switched everything to online. So we were hoping to be in person, and then it turned into an at-home language nest setting for almost the past year and a half now. And so what we decided to do was we decided to make language kits that were going to be available online, but also physical for our families. So at this point, we have done 5 total language kits, a kind of water kit, and a leaf kit, a getting dressed warmly kit for winter, spring, which includes being outside during puddle season, again, going back to the water or gardening, and then a clan kit. And so what we did for these kits was we worked with our elders online to create word lists. So we have anywhere from 3 to maybe 7 word lists in each kit on different topics that go that align with that. So for example, the water kit, we have a word list on water at the beach. We have a word list on taking a bath. We have a word list on water transfer so the kids can pour things back and forth. And so we'll have a myriad of word lists and then different activities. So we had fishing as an activity. We had a scavenger hunt as an activity. And so for all these, we're providing the language resources, and then we also have, so we'll print them off. So we have the language, like big word lists, and then we printed them off onto small keychain word lists so the parents could have them on the go. And then we've also been currently working to create more audio resources for our parents and for anyone of any learners of Anishinaabe on our SoundCloud. And then we also work to create just a small children's book with each of the kits that has to do with the topic that we talked about. And for example, the book that we made for the water kit was as, I guess, quote unquote, as simple as having just a photo of a type of water, you know, whether it's big waves on the lake or really still water on the lake, or rapids on a river, and then having a single word that went along with that. So we created all those for the first to support our families at home. And then we've actually used some of those resources while we've been doing our in-person language nests. So for example, this summer we started meeting socially distanced, masked outdoors back in July. And we actually used a lot of our water playlist. We had sand play as a word list. And I think for us, what I found the most useful, having worked on these resources over the past year, what I found the most useful was the keychain vocab list, because you have them on the go. We printed them off pretty small. We laminated them for our parents. So, you know, you can throw them in the sand, they can end up in the water accidentally, but you have those words with you on the go. And this kind of leads into, I saw there was another question just about our resources being available online as well. So our resources on our Google Drive, well, linked to the Google Drive through our website, are available for everybody. So part of what we strive to do here at OOG is make our resources, you know, we're maybe tailoring them for our parents who we're working with right now, but our resources are available for anyone to use. So you can definitely go to our website and download the resources, print them out. You can, you know, base what, if you're looking for kind of a outline of how to structure your own materials, you can definitely use that as a basis, but they're available for everybody. You don't have to be, I guess, associated with our program at all to use the resources. So.
And I'll just quick add in something else. So we're a language immersion program. So something that we've learned with the language nest and the language nest materials that we've implemented is working with early childhood education specialists. And so, of course, as we go through all of our resources, our elders are who we're working with first. And so we're then partner with early childhood education specialists based on what our elders have said. And then we make sure that the stuff is age appropriate for age 0 to 5. And so that's something that's, you know, new to us and that we're learning, as we can do all of the language stuff, but as far as the activities that we're using in these kits, we want them to be something, you know, that works for the little ones.
Yeah, an example of that would be we have so for our fall language kit, we have an activity that's a scavenger hunt. So we have the kids go around and pick up, you know, different fall things like different colored leaves on the ground, different pine cones, different shapes and sizes, maybe some small rocks. And so for the older kids, maybe we'll have them talk about, oh, what are the colors? And maybe they can sort them into different piles by what they look like. Whereas for our younger kids, we might do something simple as kind of learning about like that objects, you know, hold their place. So we might cover them and then say, oh, where did it go? And then show it again. And that might be as simple what we do for our younger kids. And that's just an example of a scaled activity. So that was recommended through our the early childhood consultants we have.
Very good. Now to a really practical question. Are the elders compensated?
Yes, absolutely. We would pay our elders first before anybody else. And so our elders, you know, as we say, are the foundation of our program. So we pay them for their time, and then we also, of course, gift them. So we use our traditional practices when we gift, and we do ceremony, and we house them, and we take care of them when they're here, and we develop that relationship with them so that, you know, they also feel welcome and safe when they're coming to work with us. And something else we forgot to mention is we're a grant funded program. And so everything that we do is kind of dependent upon that and the grants that we get. We do have grants through federal grants through the tribe, but then also we apply for grants on our own too, just as our program. So we apply for different state grants and things like that. And that's how we, you know, then of course get to our funding of our staff and funding of our elders. And I saw somebody asked if there's a tuition price for the programming, and no, there's not. That we provide free programming for all of our participants, as that's something that we budget into our grant funding. And during our summer academy, we'll ask students for a donation if they're able. And so that'd be, you know, if their tribe has money to support them, or if their work is supporting them on a work trip and things like that. And so we do accept donations, but otherwise then nobody's ever turned away for lack of funding or anything like that. And so we provide that for everybody.
Yeah, so as far as not having a tuition fee, but what we also do build into our grants is to pay for the housing. So where we have our students sleep, and us as facilitators, and when our elders come to visit, we, you know, pay for their lodging, and then we pay for the three meals that we have together every day, whether it's just the weekend or the full 2-week immersion camp. So all of that is paid for. And I think part of that gets into as well, the reason that we do have an application process is, you know, because we want to ensure that we have students who are coming that can commit to the whole, you know, it is a bigger commitment, saying every weekend for 1 weekend a month for 6 months, I'm going to come to language camp, you know, unless you're very ill or something. But we do look for students who are going to commit because, you know, there's a lot of people who would commit. And so we just want to make sure that we're providing the best space for people to be there, especially because, because it is free, and we want to keep it that way so that students can not feel deterred by money to be able to come and experience the immersion camp.
Wow, that's awesome. And I'll just pick one more, but I'd like the last few minutes, you pick the question you want to answer. But the one I'm picking for you is when you mentioned, this is from Mary Alice Martinez, they are required to have lifelong commitment, how do you monitor that?
That's a great question. So we don't necessarily monitor within our program. We do on occasion do formal assessments. So we do a lot of informal assessments throughout programming. Then we do some formal assessment with our grammar instructor, and that might be just a written or reading assessment, or it might be a verbal assessment. Sometimes we bring in somebody else to do an oral assessment as well. And so we can track progress from the beginning and the end of our program. And then of course, if students come back, we monitor in that way. Otherwise, what we look for is just the way that people talk. So sometimes, there's an element of what the person's putting across that maybe they're just doing this for a course. Maybe, they're just getting credits. They're, it's a temporary part of their life versus some learners, they're like, this is what I'm doing. This is my career. This is what I want to take home to my families. And I want to pass this on to my community and my children and things like that. So we kind of look for those people who are really invested to make sure that, we use our resources the best way possible, and then we make the best out of their time.
Very good. Thank you. And please pick I think we have time for one more question. You pick the one that you would like to answer.
Yeah, I've tried to answer a few of the questions, just texting in the chat.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Looking at the
I don't know. There's so many. It's so hard.
Let's see. A dictionary question.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at that one. I'd say John Nichols. So it's with the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus, and they have a big language program down there. And so the online dictionary, of course, started as a written dictionary and now is an online dictionary. And the way that we work with them is we work closely with Bidanaquad, and John Nichols, he works with a lot of the same elders we are working with who are the voices of the dictionary. And so how we partner is that he has helped trained us with the archival process and documentation process so we can get quality recordings. And with those quality recordings, then he can utilize those and put them on the dictionary. And then, we also utilize him to help us with editing different things. So we create a partnership between us two. He's a linguist. And in that way, then we share our resources, we share the audio recordings, we, share elders, share time, share funding, and continue the language in that way. And so that, of course, is one of the most unique dictionaries because it's a talking dictionary. And again, that's an online free resource to look at and kind of see how it might be useful for your language. And of course, you can always get in contact with the university and get in contact with Bidanaquad. And, as we again have shared previously, our resources are online and they're free for everybody. So
very good.
Maybe the last thing we could follow up on is just kind of how we keep in touch with our students, because I think that was a big question. So we do have students that will attend multiple years because we have an application process for winter and a separate one for summer. And so students might come for multiple years in a row, depending on how many students we have apply. And as far as kind of tracking where they're at, we provide journal materials for the students as well, so that they can write and say, okay, today or this weekend, I'm really going to be focusing on how to say I verb you all, so something like that. And so students can keep track of that for themselves. We also try and do assessments when we have enough funding to pay for a language assessment. So at the beginning of camp, we'll have assessment with our students, and then we'll have it again at the end of camp. So students just during their time with us can see how far they've progressed. And then as far as keeping in touch with them, after language camp ends. Again, we generally try and create a Facebook group for students. We use an app called Viber. So it's just like a texting app that students can send videos back and forth in. They can communicate that way. We also, one of the other apps we kind of started working with was Flipgrid. So you can post a question, and it's a video-based app. So you can post a question, and then students have to reply to the question with a video, and then you can comment on the video by making a new video, or maybe just writing a response. So we try and take advantage of, some of the social media that exists to keep in contact with our students, to see where they're going and what different language programs they're working on. Yeah, so hopefully that answers, I guess, as far as the continuation and improvement of their language. I think, yeah, definitely. We've had students that will come, to camp one summer, and then, or maybe over a winter program, they'll go back home and maybe they'll continue working. And then the next time they come back, it's amazing to see like how much their language has improved, and really exciting for them. Maybe they've broken down some different barriers as far as like being nervous to talk, or I think that's some of the most exciting stuff, is just watching students progress and get more comfortable and have fun in the language. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just add that a lot of our alumni are now working in different language programs. So we keep in touch in that way too, like with our email listservs and just communicating with the language programs in the area. And so that's a huge part. So a lot of the different immersion schools and things like that will just collaborate now on a professional level with those programs. And that's another way we keep in touch with our alumni.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's always difficult to say it's time, but I'm afraid we have to close the session. I see that there's one question that Zebins is answering by typing, so I'll let her finish. But otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you, Adi Kunz and Zebins, and to the participants, the attendees, and also to those who are in the background, like Laura, who's doing the technology. The recording will be available to all of you who've registered. And so you will get an email from Laura when it's ready to be viewed. Again, thank you so much, and continue your wonderful work, and appreciate your time.
Miigwech. Thank you all for having us.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you for coming, and it was awesome to talk with you all. Good job,
yes. Miigwech.